Hey, my name is Chu and I make beats. I've sold thousands of beats to artists, I've gotten major placements with my beats, and I've even gone platinum internationally with my beats. I love making beats. More than that though, I love teaching people how to make beats and how to achieve growth as an internet producer. I'm really glad to have you tuning in today. Your viewership means everything to me, so I plan on delivering a ton of value. Before you continue on to the episode, be sure to check out the description for a ton of dope free stuff. You'll find the free 14 drum kit down there. Most, if not all, the drum samples used in this video can be found in this kit. You'll also find access to my newsletter. You can join for weekly producer gems, discounts, and more freebies. Join my Discord, follow me on Twitter. There will be links to both of these down there as well. Hit the like button and comment on what you'd like to see in the future. Feedback like this is so important for letting me know if I'm making the right types of content or if I need to go back to the drawing board. Smack that subscribe button so I can buzz away in your pocket the next time I have some fire new content for you. And thank you for 3 years of continuous amazing support. I wouldn't be here without you. Okay, now on to the video. All right, so you guys have been beating me up in the comments for a mixing tutorial. So I'm literally just going to lay down a mixing tutorial today. I'm up early in the morning, it's 7:30. Got my coffee, I'm about to get started. And hopefully this is a banger by God's good grace. So the first thing we're gonna do, of course, is make a beat. I'm not gonna do anything too crazy. I'm just gonna grab some loops from the Slytherin loop kit. See which one I want to use. All of these loops that I'll be using today are available for free. Okay, cool. So then same thing with the drum sounds today. I'm just gonna stick strictly to the 14 drum kit. I'm gonna just grab some super simple sounds and then we're just gonna create like a basic drum bounce. And then from there, we can go ahead and get into like our whole mixing tutorial. 808 bounce is crazy, so we're just gonna lay down a kick that blends with it pretty well. So this is probably the one thing where I'm not gonna use something from the 14 drum kit, just because like I've fallen back in love with the kick from the centerfold drum kit. It's like the hardest kick in my entire like sound library. So I'm just gonna lay that down real quick. And again, like something that I mentioned in my drum programming tutorial a couple weeks ago is that I really do use my kick more as a perk. Like I know the traditional way of doing things is to just have your kick either follow the 808 pattern, or people will have it so like, you know, they'll have it hit every time the 808 hits, or they'll do something super minimal. Like I know Metro Boomin, a lot of times he'll do something where it's only hitting every, you know, couple bars. So it'll hit like right here, then it'll hit like right here, and then right here. Or he might even do, I've seen Metro Boomin do things even more minimal, and like in Mask Off, there's only like one kick and it barely even ever plays. And it's just like on the first like bar on the first beat for like certain sections. So like people can be really minimal with kicks and stuff like that too. I'm kind of more towards that side, minimal with it, using it more so as a perk. So yeah, I just wanted to explain a little bit of my kick drum programming real quick. Last thing from the centerfold drum kit, I swear, I just want to grab these live hats. You know, it's gonna add a little bit more bounce to the beat. I think it's gonna be really cool. You know, we can pitch that down a little bit, because the centerfold drum kit is literally just based off of my like production style. So it's like that's the reason why, like, if I do end up getting into this kit, I'll end up just using all the sounds, because it's like I always use live hats. Like even if I chop them up in Fruity Slicer or something, I always use like the Ready 808 that's from Cardiac's kit from like forever ago. The centerfold kick, like you already know how I feel. Like if I'm making like, you know, my like specific genre of like beats or whatever, not like working on anything specifically for placements or anything like that. So sorry to spam the centerfold drum kit. I promise I'm gonna be out of it after this, but I just had to, man. Bro, I deadass almost choked on my coffee. I'm not even lying, bro. That's what I get for bobbing my head so fucking hard. God, that would have been terrible. Okay, cool. So now that we have our beat, we are going to do some leveling. So now we're gonna do the leveling in 2 stages, because that's actually what I do now. So I'm gonna level everything in the channel rack first, and I'm gonna kind of talk through my relative levels, because I don't use like specific numbers anymore. So now I have like a much better understanding of how gain staging is supposed to work. So that's where this 2-tiered leveling system is coming from. So I'm going to talk through this process in the channel rack, and we're going to do it in the channel rack, and we're just going to go through and kind of like reapply it in the mixer, and then that's going to make sense in a second. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and solo everything in here except for the 808, and we're going to go ahead and let that rock. Now I want this to be the loudest thing. So I'm basically just watching this right now. If this is like close to like clipping, which I don't necessarily want, I want it to be clipping a little bit. I want my 808 to be clipping a little bit. but I don't want it to be like the loudest thing that clips because there still has to be one more instrument that goes above that 808. The next thing we're gonna do is bring in the kick, and this is the one instrument that we actually want to be louder than the 808. So we're gonna bring that in and see what kind of like warmth that adds to the beat. Okay, I definitely want it to be red, but I want to see how close I can get it to the red without it actually touching that top peak. When two sounds are playing together, it's called it creates a third sound that the human ear perceives, and that's called the Haas effect. So that's what the DAW FL Studio is picking up, and that's why it reads it as it clipping, because it's taking in those two signals and then giving you the output of the combined signal. So the rest of this is really just a listening thing, but you want everything to be leveled underneath the next thing. So I'm gonna kind of go through this and tell you what I mean. So the next heaviest thing is gonna be this snare. So when it comes, you can see that it's clipping a little bit. I don't want it to really clip super hard. I don't actually want it to be much louder than my 808, maybe around that same level. Okay, I like that. So then next, we're just gonna bring in the other snare. So for this one, I'm really just listening. I don't want it to overpower the heavy snare. I just wanna look for that nice combo where I'm getting a nice kind of like product from the Haas effect that I was talking about earlier. Solid. So now we're just gonna do the same thing with the rest of the snares. Next snare. It's a little too loud. And I'll go ahead and add some swing to this accent snare too. Bring in some more snares here. Too loud. So next snare, we're gonna do the same thing. It's a little loud. I like that. I like that. A little bit more swing on that. All right. There's a perk here, which is kind of acting like it's like an open hat. That's a little too loud. I like that. That's cool. So again, like I want to be clear about this in the channel rack. Don't think about like levels, or even like once you get past like the really first three heavy sounds where you can actually see it displaying on the little meter right here on the top of your like interface in FL Studio or whatever DAW you're using. Don't really think about it too much. Just listen to like what you want to do, and then keep in mind that you want your kick and your 808 to be the loudest things, and then you want to level everything under that. So then next would be the snares, and then next is going to be the hats, which we're going to get to in a second, and then little other perks that are a little bit that are not necessarily as loud as say your kick or your main snare, and then your melody comes underneath that in terms of like relative like loudness, right? But even that, because sometimes depending on what you're doing, it's gonna have to be a little different. So really just listen, especially in this phase, to just see how everything fits. You want it to just fit very snugly, because if you can get it here in the channel rack to just sound really tight, it's gonna make what you do in the mixer a lot easier. We're gonna go ahead and add this open hat. I think that's fine. Now we're gonna go ahead and bring in the live hats. These are actually going to be pretty quiet. It's more like felt than heard. And then just bring in the hi-hats. All right, then just bring in the melody. Now we're just gonna grab all of these and we can get into the second step of leveling, which is gonna be doing it in these little mixer faders. So again, we're gonna just start with the same thing. I used to have some exact levels. And if you look at some of my older mixing tutorials, you'll see I had like a set of levels for per video, like it's always changing. So like I've kind of come to the conclusion now that like I don't necessarily want any levels. I'm kind of just like trying to feel what I'm doing, but I'm going off of like a system of like relativity, and it's based off of what I've already done in the channel rack. So I'm gonna kind of walk you through that again, but also I'm gonna mention some relative levels, but don't marry those relative levels. Don't make those relative levels your god or anything like that, because like they're just random numbers that I kind of go towards when I'm starting, and then I kind of like work everything off of that, and you'll kind of see what I mean in a second. So again, we're gonna start with the 808. So I kind of want this to push and be pretty loud. I think that's nice for what I'm getting from this beat today. And it's like something I've noticed is like FL Studio will almost kind of be like, I know it's digital, so this isn't necessarily the case, but it almost kind of acts analog sometimes. Maybe it's depending on what type of sounds you have loaded up at the time and what you did to them. But it's almost like the same sounds will appear differently on different days, or like different instances of opening the DAW. So it's like the relative levels they're almost useless when you really think about it. So like it's gonna change every time you do it. So you really just want to feel like what do my ears tell me I need from this sound today, based off of what I understand about like relativity. So again, you're gonna want your 808 to be the second loudest thing in your beat, but I mix it first because that's how I feel the vibe in beats. I know that's probably like the wonkiest way to explain it, but basically 808 is going to be the second loudest thing, but you start leveling it first. So I got that, and then I just like to bring my kick in above that, and I like it to be louder, just louder than the 808, because the kick is going to be the loudest thing for me. And I'm okay with that clipping. I'm also okay with the 808 clipping a little bit, honestly. And then I just need the kick to be louder, always be louder than that 808. And again, in my older tutorials, I know that I've mixed a lot quieter at times, except for maybe my first mixing tutorial where I was a lot louder. But I've learned just from like very professional producers such as Wonder Girl, Eastbound, Boy Wonder, and OZ, that like one of the best things you can do for your beats is just turn up your heavy hitting sounds. That's gonna make your beats smack so much harder. Like there's not really like any special like mixing technique. It really is just having high quality sounds and turning them up. So again, that's why I recommend getting like a kit like the Centerfold drum kit or the 14 drum kit, because then you're going to be starting off with high quality sounds and you don't have to worry about doing too much extra to get them to smack. Just turn them up. It's all about relativity. Relativity is how you deceive the ears of the listener. So that's what we're going to be talking about a lot today. Now we can just start bringing everything else in. So now I remember that my kick is around here, my 808 is around here, so I could push this snare just under the 808, because it's got to be a little bit more quiet than those two things. And then I'm going to bring in the rest of the snares and have them just dance around this level here. Okay, let's bring in another snare. We could really push that one. And then once you're done with the snares, just go ahead and bring in the perks and the hats, and those are going to sit below the snares. And again, you can push these. They can be loud because you started pretty loud. Just make sure they're not louder than the snares. So I want to be clear about this order, because this is what is going to help your mix sound better, is understanding the relativity and the order of which things are mixed. Kick is the loudest thing, then the 808, then the main snare, then the rest of the snares are claps. That main snare could also be a clap or a rim perk, and then the rest of the snares, claps, perks, whatever. Then, the rest of the perks, then all the hats, then the melody. I want to say that and drill it into you as many times as I can, because that's mixing. Like after going to so many like sessions
and like asking engineers like, yo, like what, I have a channel, like I teach people, like what tips would you give to someone if you were teaching them how to mix? Like this is literally what they always say. They're like, okay, this is what I would do. I would start mixing the 808 like this, put the kick above it, do this, do this, do this. So I'm just telling you what I know, man. Like you could take it or leave it, but it's worked out really, really well for me. So I do want to, for the people that are here to learn, I really do want to drill that into you. It's all about those relative levels and doing it in that order. I promise that's going to tighten up your mix so much. That's what ended up happening for me, and it made a world of difference for me in placements, sales, and just getting more listeners in general, man. So since I want this open hat or these live hats to be more felt than heard, I'm gonna make these a little bit like more quiet than I normally would make some hats. They're more so like a light perk. And I can actually push this all the way and they still won't be very loud because of that gain staging we did at the beginning. So I think that's perfect, honestly. So now we're just gonna bring in the melody. And so it doesn't always work out like this, but when you level it, it should work kind of close to this, if that makes sense. Like you see how that melody fits perfectly under all the other sounds? Like that's how like the relativity is supposed to make it work. Like if you do this correctly, there's no reason like your melody should be all the way up here and then it would still sound good, because that doesn't make sense given like how like science and sound waves work. So if you level it properly and do all that gain staging in the 2 stages, like I promise, like you're gonna get some really tight mixes. Okay, so now we are done with leveling. Super easy. If you guys want, I will provide like some kind of tip sheet if you really, really want some like relative levels or something. Like if you're just like, I need it. Like I'll make a dope free tip sheet for this entire video. I think that would be really helpful for like any producers who really want to take this seriously. You know, I think I'll do that for free for anybody who really wants it. So I'll do that. So step 2, again, it's a simple enough concept to understand, is equalization. So what is equalization? Equalization is just removing frequencies from your beat that are going to ultimately distort the quality of your beat and kind of add muddiness or add unwanted or unneeded noise to your beat. So I'll kind of demonstrate that with a few things, a few really good examples that we have here in this beat. I'm really grateful. So one is the melody. So we can go ahead and solo this by right clicking it in the mixer, and then we can go ahead and open up a parametric EQ, parametric EQ 2. So as you can see, there's a lot of the melodies performing in a lot of these higher frequencies, or you can see where the melody's performing frequency wise. A really useful note about melodies is that like you're usually not gonna need anything. I can say almost always you're not gonna need anything below 200 hertz in your melodies, and you're not gonna really need that much above 10,000 hertz, although you won't do as hard of a cut at 10,000. So here for 200, I'm just gonna do like a steep 4, just kind of a soft, not the hardest cut, and kind of bring it just around 200. And you can see that's already cleaning up the melody just a little bit. There wasn't too many low frequencies. But the place that you're really gonna see this kind of take an effect is gonna be on the high end. So like I was saying, above 10K can be really, really harsh. So that's where we're gonna do another kind of like medium cut. I'm gonna just make that a steep 4 and roll off some of those high end frequencies right around 10K. Maybe even take it a little lower into 9,500, 300. So from here, you can do something that's called subtractive EQ. I don't do subtractive EQ a lot because I'm not like a mix engineer or anything like that. And I've kind of learned that like the difference it makes is minute in most cases, but it can be helpful, especially for melodies like this. I'm glad I picked a melody that demonstrates this pretty well, actually. That's got some harsh artifacts here and there. So something that you can do is you can just kind of reduce the slope of one of your bands on your parametric EQ, and all I did to do that was just scroll with my mouse to make it wider or bigger. You can do the same thing with this little knob right here. It'll just make it wider or bigger, and that just refines the area that the EQ band is going to cover. So if you want it to cover a wide area, then it'll cover a wide area. If you want it to cover a narrow area, it'll cover a narrow area. So now we're just gonna take this slowly through the melody and see what frequencies sound very not good, right? And what this is gonna do, it's gonna accentuate those really not good sounding frequencies, and then we're gonna just sit on top of it and reduce the amplitude of the peak so that that frequency kind of gets reduced in the overall mix. And then that's the beauty of equalization right there. It equalizes the frequencies of the mix. Okay, so I don't really like that. Pull that out a little bit. So one thing to be careful of is that a lot of people like to do like this big sweeping motion with the EQ when they're doing subtractive or additive equalization. And like the thing that you have to remember is like anything is gonna sound bad when you just drag the EQ all the way to the top and just sweep it across. Like everything's gonna sound bad in that, like when you do that. So like really be careful, be deliberate. Like if you're gonna, otherwise don't do subtractive EQ. I see it so much that it's like, I'd be like, why did you do it? Cause like, of course, when you sweep, it's gonna sound bad and you'll end up like removing things that actually sound good. So be deliberate. If you don't need to subtract, don't subtract. Just do the basic low pass, high pass, and that will be more than enough. I just wanted to demonstrate subtractive EQ because like I feel like it would be a question that I get, and like this melody could use a little bit of subtractive EQ, no cap. So I don't really like that. It's a little nasally, so I'm just gonna bring that down a little bit. Nothing crazy, really. And yeah. And this is something you could do for like a lot of sounds. Like I'm not gonna really go too much into like EQing sounds per se, because this isn't like the most in-depth like mixing tutorial. That's also like not what I would do. Like I don't go and equalize sound by sound. Like that's a waste of effort as well. Like I would not suggest that anybody do that. But like things like melodies and the next thing that I'm about to equalize, you should absolutely equalize. So the next thing that I'm gonna equalize is the 808. So the reason that I like to equalize 808s is because the human ear is not going to be able to perceive any of the frequencies below like 20 or 30 hertz in the 808. So what that ends up doing is just muddying your entire mix and making it sound dirty and less tight. Something that you can do to make your 808 and your entire beat sound really good is just set this to the hardest cut that you can have it at, which is a steep 8, and just bring it right to like, you know, like 28 hertz. Just bring it all the way down. And you can see how much cleaner that makes the 808 sound. Listen to that, that's without. Listen to that. And then it makes it smack harder too. So I gotta make sure those levels are still good. Might have to bring that down just a little bit. So that's one equalization tip that like literally saved my life as a producer. Another thing you could do to kind of equalize your 808 a little bit more, you don't have to do this, and I don't always do this, is you can kind of roll off some high end using this. You don't really have to set a steeper cut than this. This is usually fine. And you know, that can just make your 808 sound like less warm on the high end, which will distract. It won't distract from your melody as much, and that can be helpful from time to time. And you know what? We'll go ahead and do that. We'll go ahead and do that. See, those little EQ things just make the 808 smack so much harder. I'll talk about a couple more equalization things just so I don't get out of here without mentioning them. Like a couple of other like dope things you can do with equalization is you can roll off the high end of like your hi-hats if they're like too, you know, they sound a little too harsh. This is also something that Noah 40 does for a lot of the artists that he produces for. A lot of artists nowadays really like when beats have like a low fidelity quality to them. So just rolling off high end off of a lot of your sounds is gonna make your beat sound really attractive to other artists, right? That's something I actually do in my beats a lot. I'll do the same thing with these. And you can use this equalizer here as well, right? Just roll off some of the high end. Same thing with this hat, roll off some high end. Then I can push it a little bit more. Something cool that you can do with snares is make them a little bit beefy in the middle, and that's gonna make it smack harder. And I mean, you can already tell how that added a little bit of punch to this snare. But yeah, there's a lot of different ways that you can use equalization, but the point is really just to remove frequencies that cause sounds that you don't want in your beat. That's like the whole point of EQ. Or, you can use it in the reverse. You can manipulate frequencies to add sound back into your beat instead of taking it out. So you can use equalization subtractively, you can use it additively, you can also just use it to clean up, overall sounds in general using high pass and low pass. There's a bunch of other ways you can use equalization. I'm not like an equalization genius or anything like that, but that's just a few simple ways that you can use it. I do know a little bit more about equalization though, so if you guys want to see like an in-depth just equalization tutorial, I can totally do something like that. Just let me know down in the comment section below. So now that we're done with equalization, we can move on to the last step, which is stereo imaging, and this is like the coolest part of everything. So like stereo imaging basically is just something that allows you to create more depth in your beat, right? So like without stereo imaging, your beat is basically on a two-dimensional plane. With stereo imaging, your beat goes from just hearing it in the left and just hearing it in the right to hearing it, up and down behind you and in front of you. That's what stereo imaging does. You go from just hearing it right in front of you to hearing it all around. So without stereo imaging, your beats and all your sounds are basically gonna sound down the middle, right? But with stereo imaging, that's how producers and composers can get stuff to sound like it's happening to the left and a mile behind you, or right in front of your face and slightly to the left. I don't know if you've ever noticed when you take off one of your AirPods, you're not gonna hear all the sounds in the beat, is because stuff is panned or stuff is widened in a certain way that you have to have your headphones, and it has to have stereo imaging capability in order for you to hear everything. But that's basically what it does. It just makes your beats sound more wide, sounds lush. If you're making ambient beats or your melodies have decent amounts of reverb or delay, stereo imaging can be another thing that helps. Or if you have a super heavy mix, stereo imaging can be something that helps it sound less cluttered. So normally I would not recommend panning your drum sounds away from the middle or really adding any stereo width to them, particularly in trap. Drum sounds are just mono straight down the middle. For the most part, people are getting more innovative, but for the most part, people still just program drums mono down the middle. But a couple of cool things that you can do is you can pan, let's say you have multiple hi-hats, right? You can pan them away from each other so that you get more of a Coliseum listening effect almost. Instead of them being right down the middle, right? So now they're not clashing with each other as much anymore. It's almost like they're happening in different areas. It's two people in a band playing two different instruments together. That's kind of the effect you're trying to create with stereo imaging. So we'll bring in this open hat. It's hitting down the middle. I want it to hit with the live hats to the left. So I'm gonna bring it a little bit to the left, but not as much. Actually, more. And bring this in just a little bit. Yeah, I like that. Again, I don't necessarily recommend this, but this is just a couple of different ways that you can use stereo imaging and panning. This is something people actually do with their melodies a lot. I only have one melody in this beat, so that's why it's going to be a little bit more difficult for me to explain it in that regard, but I'll still also explain it with the melody so that you can understand the best way possible. So we'll get there in a second. So again, yeah, I don't really strongly recommend panning or stereo imaging your drums, but these are just some creative things that you can do, and these are things that I totally do with my beats from time to time. You can actually add some stereo width to these hi-hats as well, these hats as well. So a rule of thumb with stereo width is the higher frequency the sound, and the higher octave, the wider that you would want to spread the stereo width. The lower it is in frequency, the less you want to spread it. So a kick, you would want that very, very tight. An 808, you would want that relatively tight. But a hi-hat, which is much higher in frequency, you could add some stereo width to it. Or say a melody. Melodies always have stereo width to them. If your melody is mono, it's a garbage melody. And you can kind of see that, even if we just reset this for a second, hi-hats will usually still have stereo width to them, but something like a kick is almost never gonna have stereo width. See? It's just straight down the middle. And you can see that because these bars, they don't have any difference in them. They're hitting right, the right and left is hitting right at the same spot. So that's kind of a visual demonstration of what I was just talking about. So the higher it is, the more stereo width you can have. The lower it is in frequency, the less stereo width you want to use. And that's just because that's the way the human ear likes to hear things. This is the lowest one, so I'm gonna add a little bit of stereo width here. This is a little higher. I'm gonna add a little bit more stereo width to that. And this is the highest, so I'm gonna add even more to that. This little thing here, I'm gonna pan this to the right, probably a lot, and then just add a little bit of width to it. Oh, that sounds so dope, bro. I'm gonna do some panning with my snares and add a little bit of stereo width to each one as well, just to, you know, get it to sound a little bit more wide in the mix. I like to add a little bit of stereo width to my melodies. You don't necessarily have to do that, especially since by the time you've added delay and reverb and other effects, it's gonna have a decent amount of stereo width. And the other thing is that melodies, because they're so high and because instruments, they don't play down the middle in mono, like that's just not how instruments work. Like, it's usually gonna have stereo width anyway. So it's not something you have to do, but you can. And then again, you want to apply the same thing. I'm sorry that I didn't have another melody to demonstrate it, but your higher melodies, actually, I have a really good tutorial for you. It's a melody layering tutorial specifically covering this, so that's beautiful. If you really want to know more about stereo width as it applies to melodies, go ahead and check that tutorial out. It will be appearing on the screen right now. So I feel a little bit less bad for not being able to demonstrate that for you here. But in brevity, it would just be, you know, higher melodies, more stereo width, lower frequency melodies, less stereo width. That's basically just the mixing law, right? So, you know, here's our final beat. This is done basically. I'm just gonna let it rock for the outro, to be honest. I'm gonna finish up the beat, you know, do some effects and stuff like that. If you ended up watching to the end of this video, I do want to go ahead and just bless you with 2 extra tips, honestly. Because like, I just appreciate you for watching the whole video, bro. Like, niggas don't have attention span like that, so I appreciate that. So I'm just gonna give you 2 more tips, honestly. So this melody effects stack that I'm about to give you, you can use this on literally any melody. Like ambient guitar is gonna work, bro. I've been using this since I started FL Studio. Like, all the beats that you see on my channel page that I got placements with, it's literally like this stack. Like, of all the effects that I add, RC20, everything, like every lossy, freaking Valhalla, everything that I have, man. Decapitator, Radiator, nothing beats this stack that I'm about to show you right now, and it's just free VSTs, bro. So, right, you have this EQ here, right? So you already have a good EQ that's really just low pass, high pass. You can have a little bit of additive or subtractive EQ if you want as well in there. Next thing you're gonna wanna do is just add a chorus, and we can go ahead and start playing our melody while we do this. Add a fruity chorus, and go to the Fat Clean preset. And you can already see things are looking up. Things are looking up for real. Next thing we're gonna do is add some reverb and just go to the large hall preset. Now for this, if you want it to sound more like a pad, just have the mix beat all the way up and then turn the wet all the way up. And it's gonna sound more like a pad. So if you want your sound, if it's like a pad or you want it to sound more washed out, that's what you have to do. Otherwise, you can just use the basic large hall preset and then turn down the mix a little bit. Then you want to add some delay and just use the widen preset. Because delay and reverb add a lot of like nonsense frequencies back into your beat, because by the nature of what they do, you want to add another EQ on top of this. This is called the EQ sandwich. You can learn more about this in one of my older mixing tutorials, which I will put in the description below. And you just want to go ahead and roll off some of those frequencies that got reintroduced into the beat. Nothing crazy, just more for control than anything. Now, that's basically it. If I really want to sauce things up, I'll even add like an isotope vinyl. This is like a free VST that you can download. This one everybody knows about. I get a lot of grief sometimes when I'm doing stock plugin episodes. They'll be like, isotope vinyl is not a stock plugin VST. And it's like, if you're really too lazy to go download it, like literally open a new tab from the video and go download it, then like, I don't know what to tell you. So you don't have to use it if you don't want to, but I found that this is one of the coolest ways to add detune, and it's 100% free. There's a lot of other ways you can do it with stock FL Studio plugins, don't get me wrong, but this is the most fun, easiest way that I've found to do it. It's free. So I'm gonna just add some wear and tear, add some, this is an equalization knob. It's the year knob, but it's really just the equalization knob. So I'm gonna just play around with the knobs a little bit to add a little bit more wear and tear to my melody. And then because effects tend to add a lot of loudness back onto melodies, I'm gonna go ahead and just check it out compared to all the other sounds real quick and see how it sounds. Sounding a little bit loud. So one more kind of cool tip, and this isn't even the other freebie tip that I was gonna give you, is that when you mix in mono, you might see a lot of producers or mix engineers do this, and this is because this is the purest way that you can hear all of the relative levels, and this is just a way to tighten up your mix. It's just listening to everything in mono, and then again, organizing it based on those levels that I was talking about earlier in the video. So I can actually push this a little bit based off of what I'm hearing in mono. Okay, so that's done. So here's the last like saucy tip that I'm gonna give you for mixing. It's not free, but it's like the best tip. It's the best mixing tip I think you're gonna get. So literally just take this TR5 classic clipper. I think it cost like $80 or $90. When I got it, I think it was like $90. Which I'm not trying to say that like that's cheap. That's a lot of money, to be honest. $90 is still a lot of dollars. Fuck what people are talking about. I hate when people are like, I don't hate. Hate is a strong word. I think it's interesting when people are like, $100 is nothing these days. I'm like, bro, go to fucking like Cambodia or like Cameroon and go say that shit, bro. Niggas will maul you for that $100 and go buy some bread and some fucking like crackers to feed their families. Stop saying like I don't understand why people say stuff like that. It's funny to me. It's funny to me. But I understand that it's like, I understand like the value of money a lot. So don't misunderstand me. And that's why I hate shoveling like paid VSTs at people. Like I really don't like doing that. And that's why like I have this whole beef with Omnisphere, but I still think it's valuable to like invest in your craft whenever you have the funds and if God's blessed you with resources and stuff like that. And I think TR5 is one of the most valuable things that a trap producer or a R&B or hip hop producer could invest in. So enough about that rambling spiel. Let me just show you how to use this so we can get out of here. So all you're gonna do is open it up, put it on your master, go to this soft clip preset, and that's it. You're done. That's it. So again, that's why I say TR5 is one of those ones that's definitely worth it. So yeah, like let's just do a quick bypass test so we can really see what TR5 is really doing. So here's it without TR5. And then we're gonna turn it on. So this is really cool because it can work in a bunch of different ways. If we had leveled it more quietly, it would just bring it up. It would bring up all the levels and then smash it against the top of the of this like 0 decibel range or wherever you set the threshold, or it would bring it up as loud as it could. But since a lot of our sounds are already hitting above the meter, once you get the Haas effect and the master, as you can see, it's hitting way above that 0. What it does is another cool effect is it will just squish it down again to that 0 or wherever you set the threshold, and you'll just softly rub the sounds against it. So it doesn't sound like this very nasty, like digital clipping, which is what you get from the soft clipper or from the limiter in FL Studio, and you just get a really soft, warm clipping. So even if you have things blowing way past the meter, I feel like TR5 just makes your beat still sound really warm and really dope. But for real, again, thank you so much for stopping by, man. That's three mixing tips that I think will help basically any producer at any level, whether you're beginner, intermediate, or advanced, and you just like literally never considered mixing before. I think this will really, really help you. Thank you to you if you stayed to the end of the video to catch the 2 or 3 extra bonus tips. And just again, man, thank you for watching in general, man. I love making these videos, man. I love when you guys just watch them and comment and like them. And I don't know, man. I just really, really love you guys, and just keep letting me know what you want to see. Again, you guys were really, really like, I wouldn't say harassing, but you guys really wanted a mixing tutorial, so I'm glad that I could provide it. And yeah, man, just hit that subscribe button so I can buzz away in your pocket the next time I have some dope content for you. Stay happy, stay healthy, and always be creating. Just make sure it's dope content only. I love you, and I'll see you soon. Peace.